Hi, everyone. I'm Anna Birkenblit, PanCAN's Chief Scientific and Medical Officer. Thank you for joining us for our World Pancreatic Cancer Day event. This Pancreatic Cancer Awareness Month, we are shining a light on pancreatic cancer by raising awareness of risk factors and symptoms and celebrating our incredible PanCAN community. We're grateful to everyone for being here. Today, I'm excited to introduce you to a group of researchers and leaders focused on one of the most pressing challenges: how to detect pancreatic cancer earlier. For a whole host of reasons that we'll discuss today, far too many people are diagnosed too late when surgery is no longer possible because the disease has spread to other organs in the body. If we can detect pancreatic cancer earlier and give more patients access to treatment options like surgery, we can improve overall survival for this disease. The good news is we are making incredible progress. New technology like artificial intelligence applied to CAT scans and data platforms like PanCAN's Spark and new screening methods like blood tests are emerging as potentially game-changing advances for the earlier detection of pancreatic cancer. And our roundtable of scientists and researchers are right there leading the way. They're going to talk about where we are and what's next. So let's meet them. Sudhir Das is PanCAN's Chief Business Officer, responsible for business development activities associated with PanCAN's scientific and medical affairs programs. He also oversees the creation and execution of the organization's health data and artificial intelligence research strategy. It's an exciting time in the field right now, as we will hear more about during the discussion. Dr. Erkut Borazansi is Director of Oncology at Honor Health Research Institute. He is also a research professor of the John Shufelt School of Medicine and Advanced Medical Engineering at Arizona State University. I am also happy to introduce Dr. Beechin Wu. He is a gastroenterologist specializing in pancreatology at Kaiser Permanente Los Angeles Medical Center, as well as physician director in the Division of Clinician Research for Southern California Medical Group, and professor in the Department of Clinical Science at Kaiser Permanente School of Medicine. Dr. Wu is also co-investigator of PanCAN's Early Detection Initiative and site principal investigator for the study at Kaiser. And he is the recipient of the 2025 Pancreatic Cancer Action Network Catalyst Award for a project we'll talk more about later. And lastly, we have Dr. Michael Goggins with us today. He is the Sol Goldman Professor of Pancreatic Cancer Research and longtime director of the Pancreatic Cancer Early Detection Laboratory at Johns Hopkins University, where he has played a central role in the Cancer of the Pancreas Screening, or CAPS program. Through successive CAPS studies, from the original single-center trial in 1998 to the international multi-center CAPS-5, he has helped design surveillance protocols, identify molecular and imaging markers of early disease, and led international consensus efforts that defined who should undergo pancreatic screening and how. Not only that, he has a long history as a PanCAN grantee and supporter. We are so glad to have him join us today. So thank you all for being part of this discussion. Let's get started. So, Dr. Goggins, let's start with you. I'd love to lay the groundwork for our discussion. Why is pancreatic cancer often diagnosed at a late stage, and how are outcomes improved when pancreatic cancer is detected earlier?
Well, we all know pancreatic cancer is often diagnosed late. Often it's heartbreaking. Patients have vague symptoms, and they don't realize that it's related to pancreatic cancer, a certain amount of weight loss, maybe some fatigue, a lot of non-specific symptoms. But often pancreatic cancer is late even before symptoms are diagnosed. It's an organ that's deep in the body and near vital organs, but it's often spread before there's any warning signs. It's like certain other diseases. If you're having worried about heart disease, if you get a scan or a catheterization, you might find you have serious heart disease and you have no symptoms. The cardiac folks and the internists long ago identified risk factors that help us identify, who's at risk and what interventions could be done. And so that's one of the reasons is we need risk factors, more risk factors for pancreatic cancer to be identified by investigators. What we do know are the most powerful risk factors, which are family history and then genetic susceptibility. It's not like other risk factors aren't important. Your physical activity, your metabolism, whether you smoke or not, but the inherited factors, especially having a family history and multiple blood relatives, immediate blood relatives, or one of the cancer susceptibility genes that contributed to pancreatic cancer, those are really important to identify, because what we can do is we can screen people and identify pancreatic cancer, at a much earlier stage. And what we've been able to show in recent years, which reflects decades of research, is that especially if you diagnose pancreatic cancer at stage 1, which means the cancer is confined to the gland, it's much easier to manage. Most people who undergo pancreatic surveillance with our early detection, tests, endoscopic ultrasounds and MRI scans, most patients who get pancreatic cancer are diagnosed with stage 1 disease, and most people are alive at 10 years. And so most of those people are cured. So, that's a dramatic success that, we didn't have until very recently. And it's because we have identified the risk factors, and we've been able to screen the people most at risk.
Thank you, Dr. Goggins. You've been working on this challenge of earlier detection for decades. Your lab had even received funding from PanCAN's first Evening with the Stars Gala more than 25 years ago. I think you've done a nice job summarizing how the field has evolved and how your research helped lead us to where we are now. What are you most proud of in terms of the insights that have led to our understanding that people at high risk need to be in a surveillance program to get diagnosed earlier?
Well, yeah, first of all, still have great memories of that time over 25 years ago. It was people who contribute to PanCAN, who came together to help form PanCAN. 25 years ago, there was no early detection programs. We didn't even know that early detection could work because, most people were being diagnosed at a very late stage in their natural history. We just did not have the same understanding. And so we didn't even know you could do early detection and help patients. We didn't have, we had people who would study coordinators who'd answer phone calls from, very distressed family members about how to take care of their patients. We didn't have PanCAN. We didn't have all the PALs. We didn't have all of these resources. We didn't have the clinical and basic scientists nearly in the same level. The field has grown exponentially. We didn't have many clinical trials. We didn't have RAS inhibitors. Lots of therapies. We didn't have the standard therapies that we use now, that we're trying to build on, were just not present. We had done some groundwork. We had gained a lot of knowledge around 25 years ago, but it's really grown tremendously since then. So it's become a much more mature field, much more sophisticated in terms of clinical practice. So a tremendous amount of progress, despite the fact that we're still, really at the early stages of really having that impact the majority of our patients. But we have seen a lot of progress.
Great, thank you. So it sounds like you're proud about the progress we've made. We're also really excited about the future and the potential of new technologies like artificial intelligence to help unlock new approaches to the earlier detection of pancreatic cancer. How are you thinking about AI and its promise?
Well, and of course, it's a part of so many conversations how AI is going to transform the world. We are thinking about this both from a research perspective and, of course, how we can help our patients. It starts even just understanding the pancreatic cancer. If you have a cancer that's been taken out of a person, understanding at the very cellular level, using AI to understand the pathology better, to quantify the changes, that provides insights into disease. The types of scans that we use, we've been doing AI on CT scans and other kinds of radiologic scans. One of the ones that's more challenging are the endoscopic images that are not as easy to standardize, or the videos that are imaged. So the thousands of images that we get, and also MRI. So we have thousands and thousands of images of scans of patients who've been under surveillance, and applying the AI tools to look for the things that are below the visible eye, early signals that reflect either a risk down the line, or even something that's happening now that we can't yet see. So applying AI to the clinical imaging tests, and then of course the having your computer, your record, and extracting the information either for discovery, what is there available that we can put together and integrate, so that we do better risk assessment and early warning. So all of these areas are expected to have significant progress, we need our patients contributing to this, but these are very large scale efforts to get all this clinical data into a discovery platform that ultimately we can give answers to our patients. So the AI is helping us make progress.
Fantastic. Thanks, Dr. Goggins. Great segue to our next topic. We'll come back to you, Dr. Goggins, when we circle back to get your perspective on other topics, but I think you've teed this up beautifully for Dr. Wu. So, Dr. Wu, you're doing some interesting work related to identifying high-risk individuals through electronic medical records, as Dr. Goggins was mentioning. Let's talk more about this project that we at PanCAN are delighted to be funding. What's the goal of your quality improvement initiative?
So first of all, just really like to thank PanCAN for putting on this session and continue to highlight early detection for pancreatic cancer. It's really a privilege for me to be a part of this panel, so I'm very excited to be here. And to answer your question, yes, we are really focused on this one key aspect of applying AI for an early warning system using the electronic health records. And so we asked the question about, are there signals that we could draw upon from the electronic records that would give us an indication that someone is on the path to potentially developing pancreatic cancer? And you heard this earlier, that often it's found too late. And so are we able to pick up on subtle features in the electronic health records? And we're not the only ones looking at this. There are multiple groups that are looking at prediction models for pancreatic cancer, and that's what we love to see. But if I could just set the stage for a moment, the vast majority of work to date has been around developing models in a retrospective fashion, sort of that look back or in silico approach. And so what we're doing now is really translating this to the real world, saying, how do we apply this in clinical practice? How do we implement this AI algorithm? What are some of the human features that we really need to address? How do we explain this to our patients in a way that makes it acceptable? Will our primary care colleagues be on board in terms of using this alternative, innovative approach to finding cancers early? So that's a lot of what we're working on, with the intent of being able to scale this more broadly so that we can realize this concept of earlier detection in pancreatic cancer.
Fantastic. So you've talked a little bit about the electronic medical record and how we can use AI there. We'd also love to talk a little bit more about the other ways technology might help with other parts that we've struggled with, particularly around imaging. So we've long used scans like MRIs and CT scans to help detect pancreatic cancer. Help us understand the limitations and challenges, and how new technology might help making these scans more effective.
Yeah, that's really the crux of the issue, is that we're only as good as our ability to see, right? No matter how good we are at risk stratification, we want to be able to move the needle, to shift the ability to find cancers at a much earlier stage. And so one of the challenges is, unlike colon with polyps or other areas, the precursors of cancer are often microscopic. We can't see them on a cross-sectional imaging like a CT scan. But what our group, as well as others, have shown is that, if we look back again, that in silico analysis of patients who develop pancreatic cancer who happen to have some imaging prior to the diagnosis, through the use of AI, yes, we are able to really pick out those patients that are more likely to progress to pancreatic cancer. And there's some learnings along the way as well. With these algorithms are able to pick out with a high degree of accuracy which pancreas looks like it's on its way to develop pancreatic cancer. But the challenge has been it's hard to pinpoint exactly where within the pancreas. And this is a common finding among many of the groups that are looking into this. And what it's showing us is that there may be what we call field defect, that there's something about this person's pancreas where it's likely to progress to pancreatic cancer. And that could be the signal that we use to really follow someone more closely thereafter. So there are precedent for this, for example, outside of the pancreas. It's already being done, for example, in breast imaging. So patients who have a normal mammogram, there's more that could be learned from those mammograms. And there are algorithms that are in place right now to risk stratify, to identify patients who we should be calling back sooner for subsequent evaluation. So that's something we envision in the pancreas field as well.
Fantastic. Thank you, Dr. Wu. Now I'd like to pivot to PanCAN's early detection initiative for a moment. So Dr. Goggins, you had talked about people with a family history and genetic risk factors for pancreatic cancer. The largest non-genetic risk factor for pancreatic cancer is actually diabetes, new onset diabetes. And that's what's being studied in the early detection initiative that PanCAN is doing. And Dr. Wu, you're co-investigator, site principal investigator at Kaiser. This study is exploring the connection between new onset diabetes and pancreatic cancer. So what's happening now with our EDI study and what's coming next?
Yes, the Early Detection Initiative, or EDI study, a monumental undertaking as far as bringing together different health systems from different parts of the country and taking a deep dive into that relationship between new onset diabetes and pancreatic cancer, but taking it a step further as far as enriching the population, looking at what I would call a rule-based approach. So maybe it's not quite AI, but the enriching diabetes model for for pancreatic cancer, or NPAC, that was developed at the Mayo Clinic, applying that and understanding what type of lead time would we be able to achieve to identify someone before they develop pancreatic cancer. Also, we've learned that it's not a one size fits all, that we have to sort of tweak all of these algorithms to address the population, whether it's Southern California, Texas, Minnesota. There are nuances that we need to appreciate in order to optimize these models for success. And then finally, I think there's also elements in terms of keeping up with clinical practice, that practice changes and we have to be able to adapt that. And that's true of all of these future AI models. It's not a set it and forget it. I liken it to sort of the flu vaccine, where we'll need to tweak this every so often to keep up with changes in healthcare and population changes as well. So those are all things that we're learning from the EDI initiative.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. So thank you, Dr. Wu, for your leadership with our EDI study. Let's bring Dr. Das into the conversation next, as he can talk about another PanCAN initiative that's moving the field forward. Sudhir, thanks for being here. As we've been learning from Dr. Goggins and Dr. Wu, access to patient data is critical, especially in this new era of AI and machine learning. So let's talk about Spark, PanCAN's health data platform, and introduce our community to what it is, how it works, and why it's important.
Yeah, first off, thanks, Anna. It's great to be here. And what a privilege to share the stage with such brilliant colleagues that have contributed so much to the field. So Spark is PanCAN's external-facing health data analytics platform. We leverage the Spark platform to provide qualified researchers with access to de-identified data from our various PanCAN programs, like our Know Your Tumor program and our Precision Promise clinical trial. Now, the platform itself enables researchers to peruse and analyze the data through an easy-to-use interface, and it comes equipped with extensive analytical apps already built into the platform. Now, data sharing and Spark are so important because so much of today's data that's out there about pancreatic cancer patients remains locked up in silos. And these data can be really valuable to researchers, particularly with the emergence of new AI applications almost daily these days. So we really see Spark as another way that PanCAN can help catalyze the research community.
Wonderful. So we've talked a little bit about why partnership between companies developing tests for early detection and academic experts is important and is going to become even more critical as the field evolves. So, Sudhir, how are you thinking about these partnerships in the future, and what do you see as PanCAN's role?
So our goal is really to get as many bright minds working on our data as possible and to attract as much of the emerging innovation in AI as possible to the pancreatic cancer field. And we see our data partnerships as a key tool in our toolkit to accomplish this. But PanCAN plays many roles with our partners that help catalyze the field. We serve as a connector across academia and industry. We serve as a funder. We bring the research community together through events like our scientific summit. We serve as an innovator ourselves with many of our programs and partnerships, some of which will hopefully change the course of this disease in the future. And just to give you a concrete example, the NCI has recently favored the inclusion of patient data into research grant proposals. So we've had several researchers include access to Spark in their grant applications to strengthen their submissions. We're really hopeful that Spark access, combined with our letters of support that accompany it, will help them be successful in this year's grant cycle. So,
Terrific. Thanks so much, Sudhir. I think that's a really important, concrete example of why our Spark database is so valuable and how we can support young researchers during this difficult time. This work is unlocking all kinds of potential here for collaborations that we really haven't had before, and I'm excited to see where we go from here. So let's bring our next panelist, Dr. Borazanci, into the conversation. He's right there at the leading edge of a partnership focused on a blood test to detect pancreatic cancer. So, Dr. Borazanci, we've heard throughout our discussion about the promise of blood tests. So there are some on the market now to detect multiple types of cancers. They're called MSAIDs, or multi-cancer early detection tests. And while MSAIDs are available already, we are awaiting results from several large ongoing studies looking at whether or not they will really improve survival at the population level. If they do, it'll be a game changer for how we approach screening for cancer overall. For now, we know that screening strategies for some cancers, like mammograms for breast cancer, colonoscopies for colon cancer, improve survival. Unfortunately, for pancreatic cancer, we don't yet have a screening strategy like this for people of average risk. However, there are screening tests available for people at higher risk for pancreatic cancer, if they have a family history or a genetic mutation. This includes ClearNote Health's Avantec test and Immunovia's PancreaSure test. The latter is being offered at several sites in the U.S., something you're involved with, Dr. Borazanci. Could you give a brief overview for our viewers? How do these pancreatic blood tests work?
Well, first of all, thanks, Anna, for having me on. And again, I think it's great to share the discussion and the awareness and what's going on with pancreatic cancer research. But as Dr. Goggins did point out, we have come quite a long way within the pancreatic cancer research world, and that includes early detection. As been already mentioned, we don't have that mammogram, we don't have that colonoscopy for pancreatic cancer today. So we're looking at ways of finding non-invasive tests that can tell us that that individual perhaps may have pancreatic cancer. So you talked about these tests, and these MSAIDs are multi-cancer early detection tests. They involve a blood test that look for changes within the blood, within cells that may point to a potential origin of a cancer signal. Moving beyond that, though, as you mentioned before, both through ClearNote and Immunova, companies like them, they're focusing on specific pancreatic cancer detection tests. And these are also blood tests as well, looking at, in Immunova's case, a series of proteins in the blood that may point to us that person has pancreatic cancer. And then with ClearNote's test, it's actually also a change in the DNA, a modification in DNA that also is related to pancreatic cancer. What's interesting that most individuals with pancreatic cancer are probably aware of cancer markers. The most common one is CA19-9, which actually is a protein that we can detect in the blood. But anywhere between 15 to 25% of individuals out there don't even they're not even positive, even with despite having pancreatic cancer. So So tests such as the Immunova PancreaSure is actually incorporating CA19-9 with other proteins that we hope can help those individuals that are at higher risk of pancreas cancer be aware that they actually do have pancreas cancer. Those test results in the last year have been published, and they're looking at individuals that have stage 1 or stage 2 disease versus those that are otherwise healthy controls. What we're always going for with any of these tests is ensuring that that test result is truly indicative of what's going on, meaning that if you have a negative test, how accurate it is to tell us that you really are negative versus if you're positive, how accurate that tells us that you actually do have something going on, so your doctor can proceed forward with additional testing. And as you mentioned before, we're currently focusing on individuals with a known family history, or they also have that genetic mutation that they carry that you hear about, whether it's a BRCA mutation, a ATM mutation, CDKN2A, among others.
Great. That's exciting to see the process unfold. So, what are you learning, and what are some of the challenges being uncovered, and what might be next as we continue to learn more?
Well, I think what we're learning is that these tests do tend to do a decent job of being able to give us additional information. I think the reality is that we're not 100% there yet. So I look at these tests as things that can enhance what we currently have available as a tool. And so at any institution that focuses on early detection, so seeing that expert who is aware of what's out there, thanks to the work that's been done over the last several decades, especially led by Dr. Goggins and team with the CAPS consortium. But being aware that, okay, well, we can talk about that MRI, we can talk about the endoscopic ultrasound if it's indicated, and then utilizing a blood test to enhance that surveillance program. And I like to think of it as something that if I'm going to do an MRI or imaging test once a year, then that intervening time, I'll do a blood test to just try to capture that, because we have seen in even though it's rare, that cancer unfortunately can occur within that year surveillance too as well. I think the biggest there's certainly biggest challenge. I think we can always strive for greater and greater accuracy in the diagnostic utility of these tests. They're not 100% perfect. I think the other challenge too is that the approval of these tests by the FDA and insurance agencies. Currently, even though that there are tests available for to be ordered, there is a cost associated to them, and so for every individual that comes into the clinic, they have to have a discussion. I know that these companies do talk about, well, we have ways to make the test cost more feasible, but I think that's a really big challenge. And having a discussion with your physician and seeing what can be done and the value of that test for that individual is still a challenge today that I do hope gets better as we get more data and more results out there to the regulatory agencies, and hopefully we'll see these tests starting to become approved in the coming years ahead.
Thank you, Dr. Borzanski. Dr. Goggins, I would love to have your perspective on this topic as well. How are you thinking about blood tests like this, especially in tandem with long-term surveillance in a high-risk population? What does good look like, and what are the unanswered questions?
Yeah, I think Dr. Borzanski, highlighted many of the main issues. For the CAPS consortium, that we have a blood test clinical trial that we're using and we have been doing for the last number of years, and we're using it as a complement to the standard clinical MRI and endoscopic ultrasound. So the first message is that the standard is those MRIs and endoscopic ultrasound tests. They can detect small stage 1 pancreatic cancers better than, as all the evidence points to, any of the current blood tests, and especially these MSAID tests, which we do think have significant power across cancer, all different types of cancer. For pancreatic cancer, they may fall short because of their ability to detect early stage. We really want stage 1 pancreatic cancer. And yes, indeed, cost is a factor because it's not just a one-time test. So you're incurring a significant cost. Some of the commercial tests, some of these costs can come down over time. So we look forward to that. And what is positive about that is that we're seeing tests, and now we can do bake-offs to compare which tests are, which ones are going to win out, or can we combine them in some way. So that's encouraging. And so one of the things we're doing is we're using the blood test in between the annual scans to complement. We're learning about how the blood tests are performing. Essentially, our blood test is taking the CA19-9 tumor marker test and combining it with a companion, what we call a tumor marker gene test, which basically personalizes the CA19-9 level and helps the clinician understand what's normal for that individual. And that really improves the accuracy of the test and overcomes a lot of the challenges. And so that, whether it's that test as a blood test, this concept of developing the blood test alongside of the standard clinical scans allows us to learn a lot. We want to complement the imaging. We want to detect pancreatic cancer, even earlier if possible. So having that additional blood test could be a great help. I think we need more than what's currently out there in terms of those tests. In all likelihood, even though they're likely to be a positive, we need to detect stage 1 pancreatic cancer as our main goal. And so we need the tests to really perform better. But we're much further on than we were. So we just got to keep at it.
Well said. So, Dr. Wu, let's get your take on this. Are we putting together some of the pieces that may lead to a reliable way to screen for pancreatic cancer? How do you see the use of these tests with surveillance and imaging evolving, before we get to the point where someday, hopefully, we'll have, an approved screening strategy that gets reimbursed, but it's going to be a while before we're there. So how are you envisioning things at the moment in the near future?
Sure. So far, we've talked a lot about the high-risk population. These are individuals who are recognized based on their genetic history or their family history to be at increased risk for pancreatic cancer. But I also think in terms of the larger pool of what we call sporadic, people who don't have that known history, either in their genes or their family, who do go on to develop pancreatic cancer. And this is where it fits in with that concept of the early warning system, because what we've learned is that even with AI and usually all the data in electronic health record, the pool is still a bit indeterminate, that our risk profile, we still need another layer to be able to identify those patients at highest risk where it makes sense for them to go on for further imaging. And so having that intermediate step is another role for these biomarkers. And in particular, what I think about is it would enable us on the AI side to relax some of the criteria, to cast a wider net even, so to speak, so that we're identifying as many cancers as possible, and those who have the biomarker would be the ones that move on for further testing. And we've done some surveys around this, at least for people who are at average risk. And when faced with the question of, there's an algorithm that says you may be at increased risk, would you come in for a CT scan? Would you rather have a blood test first? In many cases, the blood test is preferred. It's just more convenient. There's not as much exposure to and even minor amounts of radiation. So that's something that we do think will factor into our ultimate strategy.
Thanks, Dr. Wu. Yeah, this is really a team sport, right? I mean, we need the primary care doctors to be mindful. We need the gastroenterologists. We need the pathologists, the radiologists, the medical oncologists, the epidemiologists. We really need to work together to advance the field. So thank you for that. there's so much to be excited about as this is coming together, but it's still in the forming stage. So I would love to take a minute and ask a question focused more specifically on what folks need to know now. So for the clinicians on our panel, Dr. Goggins, Borazansi, and Wu, our patient services team talks to family members, people diagnosed with pancreatic cancer every day. And these people often have questions about how to manage their own risk. So we have talked about people who are at higher risk due to genetics, family history, new onset diabetes. There's even chronic pancreatitis, pancreatic cysts. So lots of different folks may be concerned about developing pancreatic cancer. So as these blood tests continue to become available, what's the guidance? So who should be getting these tests and what other tests should people consider? I'm going to go in the order of Dr. Goggins, Dr. Borazansi, and then Dr. Wu.
Well, and yes, thank you. Yes, certainly more broadly, in terms of what should they do? Well, to be aware of the early detection standard of care. Should they be getting a gene test to understand what their genetic risk is, understanding what their family history is? Some of the metabolic health factors, we see about the dramatic results of the GLP-1 agonists, reducing cancer. So achieving metabolic health, could be a major goal, not just for pancreatic cancer, but for all sorts of other chronic diseases related to whether it's the obesity epidemic or related. So those are things to bear in mind. The good physical activity, all of those health matters are likely to be significant for pancreatic cancer risk. In terms of what they should be doing regarding these MSAID tests, well, as you pointed out, these large trials are going to inform us soon about these so-called MSAID tests, and they won't replace, I suspect, in the near future, the standard imaging. But it's a time of emerging change and lots of data coming down the pike. These tests may be appropriate for some people who can afford to have them on a regular basis for their cancer risks overall. But we're not currently offering them routinely to patients. For example, in our CAPS consortium, because they're as yet unproven and they are expensive. So we are looking to see more accurate blood tests to be used in the clinic. Our patients are still helping us because we're undertaking research to really know what is going to be effective. Again, the key here is the tests have to be able to detect pancreatic cancer at a very early stage, where then the dramatic improvements in survival can be achieved. And so, the research studies need to be done on these blood tests to help us understand if that's going to be the case. Meanwhile, understanding risk, and for the clinicians and investigators doing this, we're going to be able to better identify who's at risk. You were pointing out that we only have the genetics and the family history and the new onset diabetes. Well, if we identify additional significant risk factors, we can bring more people into that higher risk group and have them get surveyed. So I think that's an area where I think we're going to see growth, and then we can apply these tests, and offer the patients most at risk the tests that they need, and that I think maybe is something we can look forward to.
Great, thank you. So, Dr. Borazansi, what's your perspective? Who should be getting these tests? What other tests should people consider? Like, how do you talk to people about this?
Yeah, and I think it's a great question. I think that the key thing here too is to also, again, thanks to organizations like PanCAN to raise the awareness and get people in the right direction. I think it's so important if I'm someone who's dealing with a chronic pancreatitis or family history of pancreas cancer, to seek out places and centers and those physicians and groups that are really focused on early detection. And again, I believe over the years, again, it's amazing to me, in the last decade plus, how things have started coalescing a bit, and there are individuals and centers that are throughout the country, throughout the world, that are really focusing on pancreas cancer detection. So in my mind, I think that's a key thing to ask. Okay, well, if I'm going to see my internist and I'm worried about, I've got new onset diabetes, and I remember my father had pancreas cancer in his 70s. Well, what does that mean for me? And so if my internist is having difficulty walking me through that, then I need to be looking for a place or a center that really is focusing on pancreas cancer detection. And again, as we've talked about today, there's a lot of hard decisions and a lot of things out there, and you want to meet with a team that is comfortable with that. So perhaps it is utilizing, whether it's getting that genetic testing done if it hasn't been done and that's indicated, utilizing imaging, the MRI, perhaps endoscopic ultrasound, and also talking about, okay, is an MSAID right for me? Should I consider some of these other blood tests too as well? Let's talk about the pros and cons of each one. And more importantly, as time goes along, being aware and comfortable about the evolution as we're learning about things in the coming years ahead. And as Dr. Wu alluded to, is that we may be casting that wider net, and you want to be at the place where they're aware of that cast, and so that way they know who to bring in. Let's talk about what we can do for you today and the future.
Wonderful. Thank you. And Dr. Wu, any other thoughts on who should be getting these tests? What other tests people should consider?
Well, I do think it's all been said. I'll just rehash and emphasize that if you have a family member that's been diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, get tested for genetics, right? That is really standard of care in terms of looking for any of those relationships and to be enrolled in some of these high-risk screening programs. And on that latter point, I think it's so key to recognize that the field is evolving so quickly, and it's really important to be an advocate for yourself and find someone who's going to advocate for you and be on top of the literature and all of the new developments, because wherever you are, there will be physicians who are engaged in early detection, and staying on top of the developments is really going to be a cornerstone moving forward, because it is moving tremendously fast. And I think, as Dr. Borzanski had mentioned, if you're not hearing the right answers or you're unsure, seek out some of your local centers where this is part of their practice and they're much more comfortable about walking you through the different options.
Thank you, Dr. Wu. PanCAN, one of PanCAN's roles here is to stay abreast of this rapidly evolving field so that we can guide patients. While we don't provide medical advice, we do talk to patients and caregivers and family members and can help people ask the right questions and get to the right programs. There are surveillance programs across the country, so we can help people get to the right places so they can get the information they need to make the right decisions for themselves, because it's complicated. So with that, I just would love to pull out my crystal ball here. Let's look into the future. We've talked a lot about what we're excited about today. It's a little bit messy today, but lots of hope and promise. So in 10 years or maybe even 5 years, what is it going to be looking like? What are we going to be doing for screening and detecting pancreatic cancer? So let's do the virtual table, and I'll start with you, Sudhir. What's your crystal ball say?
Okay, I think in the next, let's say 5 to 10 years, I'm going to be bold here, and I'm hopeful that within that time frame, we'll be able to identify and validate additional high-risk populations. I think we'll have more consistent and ubiquitous surveillance of those populations, and we'll have an effective approach for identifying pancreatic cancer earlier, whether that be through an algorithm, a blood test, or some combination of technologies. It just really feels different at this point in time. I think we've generated a lot of momentum in this field, and real innovation is coming to the clinic. So we just have to keep this movement going.
All right, Dr. Wu, what do you say 5 years from now? What's it going to look like?
I do believe we will have the ability to find cancers earlier. I think that we've set the stage for this. What I'd hope for in the future is that we shift the goalposts so that we're not necessarily finding cancers, but we're finding precursors to cancer, and we can intervene. That there's this concept of interception, right? Really preventing the development or altering the biology to a point where it becomes more susceptible to treatment. So I think that's really our long-term goal.
And Dr. Goggins, how about you?
Yeah, I would reiterate some of what was said. I do think that we will have better understanding of risk and be able to offer additional patient groups beyond what we're currently doing. Early detection approaches, and that approach will include blood testing. It may even well include blood testing only for people who maybe don't want to receive the kind of endoscopic or MRI-based imaging. And I like what Dr. Wu mentioned about the interception, of course, as well, because there's great work being done on immunology and immunoprevention and also chemoprevention, as well as the imaging abilities that could help us detect precursors earlier. The challenge there is not too early, and there's a whole other challenge there, but it's definitely that's an ambitious goal we should be striving for as well. And related to that is the prevention efforts, like as we mentioned earlier about the treatment of obesity, people who are at serious metabolic health risk, having the potential to reverse some of that, so that we're engaging in more prevention as well. So through these combinatorial methods and gathering all the data as was mentioned, through these being able to access the chart records. So just having much more information at our fingertips as clinicians as well as researchers, I think we can see much greater impact. Other diseases have been able to, extract a lot more information from their patients in terms of risk. For pancreas, it's been a little harder, but we're getting there. And I think then we're going to have more tools and more treatments available for our patients for prevention and for treatment.
Thank you, Dr. Goggins. So I'm hearing we're thinking 5 years from now, we're going to have more high-risk populations identified, more sort of standardized screening, surveillance strategies with more blood test involvement and earlier interception for cancers. Dr. Borazansi, I'm giving you the last word because you also mentioned cost and access. Where are we going to be 5 years from now also in that regard?
Well, again, to just reiterate what's been said already about the future, I agree, and again, I think as the data builds up, we're going to be talking about being able to get approvals and authorizations and even more robust tests. I'm certainly excited, as not only as someone who's interested in early detection, but as someone who takes care of people with pancreas cancer. And I believe the reality is, as we have these better tools for detection, we're going to incorporate very specific targeted ways to treat pancreas cancer. And perhaps we may even suggest bypassing some of the traditional routes that we've done over the years for treating people with pancreas cancer due to these early detection tests. So I'm really excited about the future. I think all of our careers will evolve and hopefully for a very positive outcome with these individuals for pancreas cancer in the future.
Fantastic. Thank you all. I'm really, really thankful for all of your work that you've been doing throughout your careers to get us to this point. We still have more work to do together so that we can turn all of this science into survival. I'm really optimistic about it, and I'm looking forward for us all working together as we march on here. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Great job.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you all for tuning in today. This World Pancreatic Cancer Day, we invite everyone to join PanCAN in raising awareness of this disease. Here are 3 easy steps you can take. Number 1, visit pancan.org/shine a light to learn more about pancreatic cancer risks, symptoms, and early detection. Explore many of our helpful resources, including our conversation guide and a 10-question risk assessment test. Number 2, make a gift today at pancan.org to support pancreatic cancer research funding, free services for patients and families, and more. Number 3, join your community and fundraise for the cause. Sign up for a PanCAN Purple Stride Walk in your area at purplestride.org. I'd like to take a moment to thank our partners and sponsors. Thank you to our leading national partner, Revolution Medicines. Thank you to our national partner, Ipsen. And thank you to our webinar sponsors, Ipsen, Immunovia, AbbVie, Boehringer Ingelheim, Eli Lilly, and EMD Serono. And thank you to our scientific and medical affairs industry champions, Astellas, Immuneering, Ipsen, Novocure, Partner Therapeutics, and Revolution Medicines. Also, a very special thank you to all our donors joining us today. All of the research we fund and the comprehensive support PanCAN provides to people facing pancreatic cancer is only possible because of you. Thank you. And lastly, remember that PanCAN Patient Services provides free support and resources to help patients and caregivers navigate any questions related to pancreatic cancer. Contact PanCAN Patient Services and a case manager can help you. From all of us at PanCAN, thank you for joining us this World Pancreatic Cancer Day. I hope everyone has a wonderful holiday season.